crying. The life that came into this world is crying. Ah, good. You're alive and healthy. You inherit the blood of someone very, very important to me. Thank you so much for being born. Please grow up happy and live the life I couldn't. My time grows short. I can't even hold my child. I can't even express these feelings to anyone. It's time to rest. I pray that when I wake up, it will be in his arms. Now this is just depressing. What a way to start a game. And what is going on, guys? Welcome to Kara no Shoujo, the second episode, the sequel to, of course, the first Kara no Shoujo. I've been really highly anticipating doing a playthrough of this game because I did actually play a little bit of this game a long time ago, actually, but I never really finished it. I got maybe, I want to say, 4 or so hours into the game. It's really good. Like, it's definitely a huge step up in terms of quality and just, in my opinion, storytelling from the first game. It has a bit more of an intriguing plot, and it seems to really bring together some of the characters that were introduced in Cartagra, as well as, Kara no Shoujo, and introducing a lot of new characters as well. So I've been really excited to play this, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people that wanted to see me do the sequel. And the last episode, as you all know, has just recently been released in Japan, which is I'm assuming the final game in the, I guess you could at this point call this the Kara no Shoujo trilogy. But yeah, we are doing the second episode. I will say this is going to be very, very interesting. and I'm really excited to get into it. So, with that all being said, let us proceed. He comes to Inokashira Park after walking a short distance from the southern exit of Kichijoji Station. The park at night is silent and still as death. Reflections of the streetlights quiver on the surface of the pond. It's a beautiful sight. It makes him want to sketch. The nature of the inner city is different than the scenery he used to draw out in the country. Even the sakura tree that has shed its leaves seems somehow urban to him. He walks over the carpet of the snow to the sakura. He lays his hands on the trunk. The tree is perfectly still, but it's almost as though he can hear the pulsing of life from within it. The sakura that conserves its strength so its flowers can bloom in spring. He wouldn't mind becoming nourishment for such a noble cause. Was it Kaiji Motojiro that said there are corpses buried beneath the sakura? Okay, well, at least we have some information for, or some additional information for the references in this, which we actually didn't. I don't think we actually had that in the original game. He was a Japanese author, but I think I've heard that term or that general saying before, but I did not know who originally said it, of course. He takes a small fruit knife out of a paper bag. Oh, is he Shiki? Is he going to cut the lines of death of the tree? He made sure to choose one with a good sharp blade. It might have made the store clerk suspicious, but he doesn't care. Whatever happens after this doesn't concern him after all. Light reflects off of the blade. It's a pale, cold light without a hint of warmth. He observes his surroundings one last time. No one is around. There are houses in a shopping district just nearby, but the park is dead silent, not a soul in sight. This is a perfect opportunity. I must do it now. Oh, Jesus. He pulls the knife across his wrist without hesitation. Ooh. I guess he chose this place to die, huh? He feels a throb, followed by a numb sensation. It briefly looks like a mouth opening on white flesh. Blood immediately pours out. The pain hits him. When he tenses his arm, a little more blood flows out, and he feels a dull pain. Ugh, darn. He isn't bleeding heavily enough. He tried to cut with all his strength, but he only struck a vein and some nerves. He'll need to cut again. Red blood falls on the white snow. How filthy. It has to be more elegant, like flowers. He shakes his arm. Blood flies everywhere. Ugh. This is all wrong. He let out a lot of blood, but it still doesn't resemble flowers. He needs more blood. He tries to place the knife against his wrist again, but slumps forward. He falls face first into the snow. He feels pain, but even more so, the cold. I don't want to die in the snow, though it's too late for that thought now. He can't help but think about his hometown. A voice. He hears a voice. He turns his head in the direction it came from. There's a girl right next to him. Oh, I think we know who that might be. His vision blurs and the voice sounds like it's coming from far away. Why? The girl's voice. Why are you trying to die? Why, you ask? Well, it's a very long story. Before he has a chance to answer, his consciousness fades. So, we start off the game with somebody trying to commit suicide. I mean, that definitely sets the tone. Welcome to Purgatorio. One sheep. Two sheep. Oh, what the fuck is this? Three sheep. Three sheep. Four. They really outdid themselves with the soundtrack this time. It just sounds... like, the first one had a great soundtrack, but this one is so much better. What is this place? First, you must overcome 6 trials. Also, the art is just fucking amazing. I mean, the art in the first game was great too, but this one is like they kind of did it's so much better too. I was going to read that line, but I think I'm pretty sure you all could see it. Choose between them as you see fit. May she attain eternal peace. Oh. Oh, God. Eee, is that a woman with her arms cut off? Who's pregnant? Oh my God. Farewell. Okay, so yeah, I think we, this really does a good job setting the tone for this game. It's gonna be pretty fucking dark. I mean, the first one was dark, but this one, I will say, just from what I've played, yeah, it gets, well, I don't know, it's about as dark. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Yeah, pretty much. That's the thought process you should go into this game with. There was a girl named Kuchiki Toko. I, Tokisaka Reiji, met her last year in the spring of 1956. I accepted a very strange request to help her find her true self. I thought it was a joke at the time, but as I investigated, I found that the information she sought was quite complex. During my investigation, she met with an accident. She narrowly escaped death, but at a great cost. A combination of a rare blood type and an incurable condition called aplastic anemia meant that she simply couldn't produce the volume of blood necessary to sustain her life. Since her fractured limbs weren't likely to recover, they were amputated in a surgical procedure that allowed her to live with as little blood in her body as possible. And before she even had time to stabilize, she was abducted. It was a despicable crime targeting the assets she stood to inherit from a wealthy relative. I was able to quickly solve the crime, but she never returned. She was snatched away again by the serial murderer and novelist Katsuragi Shin. He hid her away, and neither I nor the police could find her, no matter how frantically we searched. We even caught the psychiatrist who may have instigated Katsuragi, Rokushiki Makoto, but interrogating him yielded nothing. It's been almost 2 years since then, and I still search for her whenever I have spare time in between jobs. But I've yet to find any clues, and my time came to a halt in the April of 1956. That was the ending, or the true ending at least, of the original game. How tragic. I wonder how tragic this game's gonna be. I take the JNR Cho line from my office in Shinjuku to Kichijoji. After walking a short distance from the station's southern exit, I arrive at Inokashira Park. I sit down on a bench near the pond. Some sort of waterfowl is resting its wings on the pond. Come to think of it, she used to come here to draw, huh? I open up the sketchbook I brought with me from my office. These are some of Toko's sketches. The small shrine near the pond. Sakura in spring. A bird flapping its wings. A girl drawn with a nervous expression. Huh. The nostalgia makes me smile. Actually, that's something new. Reiji didn't have a voice in the first game. He actually didn't have any voice acting. But in this game he does. And he also, we get to see his face. We did see his face in the original game, but not only in like the event CGs. The girl in the sketch is gone now too. An affable girl who used to be my sister's best friend. I close the sketchbook and stand up. The person I've been waiting for has appeared. Hey, Chizuru-san. It's Kuchiki Chizuru, Toko's adoptive mother. Hello. I can tell just from her greeting that she's not exactly happy to see me, but I'm grateful that we can meet like this. Please, sit down. No, this is fine. She looks down at the bench and shakes her head upon seeing Toko's sketchbook. I see. There are no new developments, correct? Chizuru asks the question before I can open my mouth. Correct. I nod. Developments related to Toko's location. We have all of the police in Kanto looking for suspicious people, but we found no new clues. Isn't this enough? Chizuru-san? Chizuru shakes her head slowly. I know that you couldn't survive very long in that state. I can't burden you with this any longer, Tokisaka-san. I've never once thought of it as a burden. Besides, I'm not searching for her because you asked me to. I suppose you're right. I can't just tell you to stop, can I? That's correct. Then could I ask you to stop making these reports? Is it a bother? Chizuru doesn't answer. Even if that's what she thinks, she probably can't say it. I'm such a selfish woman. Chizuru mumbles. Yeah, we're actually going to get a little bit more of her backstory in this too. And I think we learned what the relationship was between, like, what the actual relationship was between her and Toko's uncle in the first game, but I'm not sure if they reveal that or not. I'm pretty sure they do, but I'm not gonna say anything just yet. I can't help but worrying more for my brother than Toko. She, Kuchiki Chizuru, had certain relations with her brother and... Okay, never mind. She, Kuchiki Chizuru, had certain relations with her brother in the past. She loved her brother and tried to have his child, but in the end, her body was unable to bear children. Honestly, that might have been for the best. I hear it was related to the treatment of an illness. When their father took pity on her, he had Chizuru adopt a child, and that was Toko. I don't know how much their father knew about their relationship, but I can't expose them to him, because that's all in the past now. I'll continue searching for Toko-san. You're stubborn. Chizuru shakes her head and picks up the sketchbook she'd been averting her eyes from. She's the one I'd received it from in the first place. I'm the one who encouraged her to really start drawing, you know. Is that so? It's the first I've heard of it. I used to take pictures myself. My brother gave me a camera as a present. This was before the war. Before the war, huh? Yes, I was sickly then and went to the mountains, where the air was clearer, to recuperate. I took a lot of pictures there. So that's why you encouraged her to start drawing. She seemed to really love drawing pictures. I think I just wanted to do something motherly. Chizuru lays the sketchbook back down. I'll be going then. Right. Be careful. By the time I make it back to Kichijoji Station, the sun is already sinking into the western sky. To Moon World we go. It's still too early for dinner. Guess I'll rest a bit at Moon World. There's a coffee shop called Moon World a stone's throw into the shopping district near the station. I make sure the open sign is out and pull on the door. Welcome. I enter the coffee shop and I'm greeted by the voice of the owner, Hazuki Kyoko. Hey. Oh, Tokisaka-kun. It's not early enough to start serving alcohol, you know. I know. How many years do you think we've known each other? The shop becomes a bar at night. Give me a coffee. Sure. Kyoko takes the flannel filter out of the water. I take out a cigarette and bring it to my lips. Oh, I thought you quit. I just don't smoke at home anymore. I light the cigarette. For Yukari-chan? Kyoko asks as she pushes an ashtray toward me. Something like that. I blow the words out with the smoke. But you can do that in front of me? What's that supposed to mean? I pluck the cigarette from my mouth and flip it around. Want a puff? No thanks. Thought so. Freshly brewed coffee is laid before me. I push the cigarette into the ashtray, putting it out. I bring the coffee to my lips. Heat, bitterness, and a subtle fragrance. Not many customers today. There's no one but me in the coffee shop. It's not unusual for there to be other people here at this time, but... It's the same as always. I'm on my own right now, so it's better like this anyway. In previous years, she'd found some employees through her connections. And I've got one of my regulars here today. Sheesh. I bet I don't even spend that much here. Oh, and just so you know, I don't mean you, Tokisaka-kun. What's that supposed to mean? I'm so shocked, my face practically hits the counter. I've got a customer who likes the coffee beans I roast, and today, see, those, right there. Kyoko points at a paper bag about the size of a bag of flour. She's coming to pick that up soon. She works at a nursery in Kagane, and we became friends because we're around the same age. Did she come to pick them up after work? Well, I don't know for sure, but most likely. Isn't she a little late then? If it's a nursery, it should be closed before evening, right? Apparently not. There are a lot of parents who work late, and she said there's a lot of work to do after the kids leave, too. I couldn't handle a job where you have to take care of kids. Oh? Didn't you do pretty well at that pretend teacher job? Well, I was just pretending, and those girls weren't kids, they were perfectly obedient adults. I had very briefly taught some classes at a school. They were all good girls, weren't they? Kyoko nods solemnly. Yeah. The door at the entrance opens. Hello. Welcome, Fuyumi-san. Kyoko welcomes the customer who just came in. You got the coffee beans, Satsuki-chan? Yes, of course. Kyoko hands her the bag of beans. Oh, a customer? The woman Kyoko had called Fuyumi glances over at me. Oh, don't mind him. That's a bit rude, don't you think? I cut into their conversation with a wry smile. I'll introduce you. This is Kayahara Fuyumi-san, one of my regulars. I work at a nursery. Nice to meet you. Likewise. I'm Tokisaka Reiji. Tokisaka? Oh, that one. That one? I cock my head and look at Kyoko. I didn't say anything strange, did I? She averts her eyes. Kayahara-san, was it? What did she say about me? It's no big deal, right? Life gets better if you just keep living it after all. She deflects the question rather incomprehensibly. Hazuki-chan, I'd like some coffee too. Coming right up. Kyoko brews some more coffee. You're a detective, right, Tokisaka-san? Well, yeah. Guess my identity's been leaked. Go ahead and ask if you ever need my services. I'll keep that in mind. Fuyumi brings her coffee to her lips. Oh, that's right. There is one thing I need. What would that be? My nursery's really short on hands right now. Would you like to come help out? Please ask someone else. Ask my sister instead. She'd like to do something like that, I'm pretty sure. I return home after chatting for a while at Moonworld. The lights aren't on, even though night's fallen and it's pitch black outside. Is Yukari not home yet? That's kinda weird. I enter the house to find the phone ringing. Whoop. Yes, hello? I answer it as I take off my jacket. Oh, Nissan. Yukari, what are you calling for? Can you come to the hospital right now? She interrupts me. It's hard to tell over the phone, but I think she's crying. There's nothing I can do. Calm down, Yukari. What happened? I need you, Nissan. I got it. Kuchiki Hospital, right? Yes, I'm sorry, but please hurry. I put the receiver down. I still have no idea what happened, but I have a bad feeling about this. Please don't be something like what happened 2 years ago. Shit. I put my jacket back on. If I'm trying to hurry to Nakano, it'd be faster to take Waseda Street by car than to go to the station. I grab the car keys by the phone and head outside. Well, let's hope it's nothing like what happened 2 years ago, but considering what kind of game this is, probably gonna be as bad if not worse. Uh-oh, what is going on here? Slap. 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 Okay. Small handprints, like maple leaves, were left on the clay piled up on the offering stand. The clay's surface was glossy, so it shined with the reflection of the candlelight. Slap, slap, slap. Rather than kneading the clay, she just hit it, over and over again, without uttering a sound. There were 6 other identical stands around her. All 7 had the same lump of clay on top. If one were to look closely, they would see little bits of something white buried in the clay, and if they kept looking, they'd realize quite quickly that it was bone. The soil had been collected from the 7 graveyards in the vicinity of the village. Such had been the custom for a long time. Her hands stroked the surface of the clay, concealing the bones that emerged from the soil. Slap, slap, slap. After she'd finished kneading the clay, a new stand was prepared for her. She scooped up the clay from the 7th stand into her small hands and placed it on the new stand. She poured a little water onto it with a ladle and began kneading again with her palms. Slap, slap, slap. She mixed the soil together and continued kneading it until it became firm. Slap, slap, slap. The flames of the candle swayed. Snow wasn't being blown inside, but the winter wind was cold nonetheless. Her small fingertips were red and numb with cold, and she could barely feel the clay anymore. But she continued kneading. She knew the importance of this ritual. Slap, slap, slap. The moisture was absorbed into the clay and it became nice and firm. She grasped the clay in both hands and shaped it into a ball. As she rolled it in her hand, she molded it into the shape she had learned to make. She gave it a neck and a head, and lengthened its arms and legs. She formed grooves with her fingernails and made its face. A crude clay doll that simultaneously resembled and didn't resemble a human being. She was told that this was the shape of a human slumbering in its mother's womb. She lifted on top of the dirt that remained on the stand and took a piece of paper out of her kimono. She picked up a knife and drew it from its sheath. This was an important step toward completing the doll. She placed the cold blade against her wrist. Oh, this is some deja vu, isn't it? Someone else cutting their wrists. The blade shook as it was pushed slowly into her soft skin. Though she was told it wouldn't hurt, it was still frightening to harm her own body. She exhaled. She shut her eyes, calmed herself, and gently pulled the blade. She barely felt anything. When she opened her eyelids, she saw a thin red line on her wrist. Small red orbs formed from the slit. Red blood flowed from the cut. She clenched her fist and turned her arm to the clay doll. Ugh. She dripped fresh blood over the mouth of the fetus she had just shaped. The mouth drank in crimson droplets like a suckling baby. Then the head, then the body. The doll absorbed the blood all over, as if it were circulating throughout its body. The crude fetus sucked up the blood and its body was stained black. She wiped off the bloody blade with the paper in her mouth and restored it to its sheath. She wrapped a cloth around her wrist to stop the bleeding. There was a small paulownia wood box next to the offering stand. The sides of the box were all about 21 centimeters long, and it was the perfect size for the clay doll. She placed the fetus in the box carefully so as to retain its shape. She closed the lid. She stood. Her body slumped forward as she stumbled a few steps, but she managed to regain her footing and held the wooden box reverently in her hands. She headed outside. Slowly, she stepped onto the ground without putting her sandals on. The night wind carried snow with it and chilled her to the bone. She walked slowly on the path to the shrine, her breath white in the cold air. The stone path had been swept clean, the snow pushed to both sides. Still, the stones on the ground were as cold as ice. She walked slowly so that she didn't slip. She relied on the light of the candles as she walked. Why in the hell would you not put shoes on? Like, let me just walk barefoot out into the snow. There was a section ahead marked off with Tamaguchi. What's Tamaguchi? Tamaguchi are sprigs of sacred evergreen trees decorated with strips of paper. Oh, okay, so these are some of those trees that you usually see near shrines that are decorated with, strips of paper. That's offered to the gods by Shinto priests or worshippers, so this is usually something you'd see near like a Shinto shrine. Only the center of that section had the stone paving removed. She bowed and kneeled on the pavement. A hole had been dug where the pavement was removed. The stands that still had soil left on them were lined up here. She raised the box above her and bowed her head, placing the box in the hole. After a prayer, she used both hands to scoop the dirt off the stands and pour it into the hole where the box rested, tightly so that there were no gaps. She used the dirt from each stand to fill the hole. Before long, the box was completely buried in the dirt. 2 adults came from either side of her and raised a flat stone above the hole. The stone was fitted into the exact place it had been taken from. She bowed her head low and stood. This time, she didn't get dizzy. She bowed twice, clapped twice, and bowed once in the proper procedure before turning back. Slipping through the adults lined up before her, the Miko disappeared into the whirling snow. Child from heaven. Okay. I've heard that name. I've heard the word used before, but I didn't know exactly what it meant. The story took place in what is now called the pre-war period. So, the 1930s? Or the early 1940s, maybe? In a mountain village where the snow piled up, during the season when the cold winds blew from the Sea of Japan. It felt cold enough to freeze, but at least the sky was free of clouds. Of course, the clear sky made the temperature drop even lower, so there was really no winning. Kuroya Naori walked home, these sorts of thoughts going through his head. The settlement called Hitogata lay in the mountains on the border between the Toyama and Gifu prefectures. The residents earned their livelihood through agriculture and sericulture. Okay, what's sericulture? Silk farming, okay. Naori walked down a street in Meihina, the busiest part of the village, yet his feet sunk into the snow with every step he took. Since there weren't any vehicles that traveled on the village's roads, there wasn't any need to remove more snow than this. His friends walked in front of him, leaving footprints here and there in the snow. Being the oldest, Naori had the duty to look after them. If you mess around too much, you'll fall into the ditch, Rihito. Rihito? Oh, nicknames. Okay, it's a nickname, whatever. I don't need to read about it. The irrigation channels that went to the fields were buried in deep snow at this time of year. Just the other day, an old man from Hitorihina fell into a ditch and had to be taken to the Kuriya clinic, Naori's home. Don't worry, I'll be fine. The boy Naori had called Rihito, Hinagami Ayato, turned around. Didn't you just fall off the roof of your house trying to shovel snow off? That was because you threw a snowball at me, wasn't it, Nao-chan? I only threw it because you didn't answer when I called to you. Naori lifted his leg into the air and kicked snow at Ayato. Whoa! Ayato jumped out of the way of the snow flying at him. Naori started chasing him. Excuse me. Naori felt a tug on his sleeve and turned around to see a girl with snow on her head glaring at him. Seems like he hit something. Oh, sorry, young mistress. The girl Naori had addressed as such was actually named Futami Yu, and just as her nickname indicated, she would inherit the Futami Inn. Since she was still a student, her work consisted mostly of helping out her grandmother, but her level-headed personality and way of speaking already made her seem very dignified. If you're going to throw snow on people, keep it to Rihito. Don't bother Ohina or Goriko. Why is it okay for him to bother me? You can get away, can't you, Rihito? That makes it sound like you're calling Ohina and Goriko slow. The girl called Ohina was Ayato's twin sister, Karen, and the other. I'll have you know, my reflexes are perfectly fine. Takamiya Meguri, also known as Goriko. Goriko's got enough energy to run 300 meters, so she'll be fine. I'm not running anywhere. My shoes will get dirty. And your clothes will get wet if snow is thrown at you. The two fashion-conscious girls nodded to each other. Karen? What is it, Nisama? Eek! The snowball hit Karen dead on. Jeez! Karen puffed up her cheeks and knelt down to make her own snowball. By the time she was done, however, Ayato was long gone. So energetic. Yu sighed the words out with white breath as she stood next to Naori, astounded. Why is this giving me Higurashi vibes with how this with how that scenario is playing out? It's like a small village, a bunch of friends, and then death and murder happen. There was a small police station in the area at the village's entrance, known as Maihina. It was the only place in the village where the police were stationed. Of course, the building was tiny, and the only police officer stationed there was a man from the village named Takayama Shinobu. It was the middle of the Second Sino-Japanese War, but there were no military institutions anywhere near the village, and no military police either, so the village was relatively relaxed. Sino-Japanese War. Japanese invasion of China spanning from 1937 to 1940. Okay, so we're definitely in that period. Since Takayama returned to the village as an officer, there hadn't really been any incidents of note. Sometimes an old couple would get into a fight and one of them would swing a kitchen knife around, or people would get into arguments where someone's field ended and someone else's began, but nothing worse than that. Yeah, small town problems. During the daytime, he patrolled the area and maintained public order, and that was all he did. However, it was cold today, so he'd been in the station all day monitoring the stove to make sure the station didn't catch fire. So cold! Takayama mumbled as he held out his hands to the stove and occasionally rubbed them together. A dented kettle let off steam above the stove. Today he was in the mood to heat up some sake and warm himself up from the inside. But he was on duty, so he restrained himself. Instead, he poured some water into a small teapot to make some tea. Hot, hot, hot! The teacup was too hot for his cold hands. He pressed down on his earlobes to cool his fingertips off. He sipped up hot tea enough to burn his tongue. Nothing to do. He grumbled as he played around with one of the mandarins an old lady from the neighborhood had given him. He could have gone out on a patrol since he was bored, but he didn't find the idea appealing either, as he'd helped out with the village snow shoveling yesterday, so he found that he'd really rather not move. The hardest part had been clearing the snow from the long stone steps leading to the Shigusa Shrine in Atohina. Of course, being thanked by Saya-san, the daughter of the chief priest, was reward enough for Takayama. The door to the police station opened. Ooh, it's cold. That's why Nao-chan said it was dangerous to mess around, didn't he, Nisama? The students trudged into the station, a boy covered in snow, Ayato, in the lead. Whoa, wait a sec. Sorry for disturbing you. Oh, not at all. Wait, no. Hello. The station was filled with students before Takayama had time to stop them. Another cold day, huh, Takayama-san? Jeez, this isn't a playground, you know. He grumbled, and as he was about to sit down, he realized that his chair was occupied. Having no other options, he leaned against the wall. The mandarins he'd been given disappeared from the basket in an instant. If you're gonna hang out, could you do it in the branch office next door? But old man Saizo would yell at us over there, Ayato said without a hint of shyness. Why are a bunch of kids hanging out in a police station? I guess there really is nothing better to do in such a small town. It's like, let's just go hang out at the police station. They won't mind. That old man has always been pretty noisy. Kuki-san and the old mistress carry a lot of weight around here after all. Isn't your family higher up than my grandma, Ohina? The Hinagami family is definitely special. Takayama stared at the Hinagami children, Ayato and Karen. The Hinagami family had always ruled this area, Hitogata village. Even after the Meiji and Taisho eras, the Hinagami family still wielded influence behind the scenes in the area. If they had just been village chiefs, they would have lost influence with time, but in recent years they'd established a pharmaceutical company and brought wealth to the village. Takayama could remember his family teaching him to show respect to the Hinagami family. So that's why he can't say anything. Hey, isn't your mandarin awfully big, Karen? I'm not sure about that. Do you want to trade me, Sama? Of course, the successors to that family may not have been aware of that at all. Hey, Nao-chan, when are you going to take us to this hideout of yours? Don't bring that up here, stupid. Hideout? When Takayama asked, Naori made an uncomfortable expression. It's just, the thing in the mountains I made. Well, I get that you're at an age where you want to do stuff like that. Takayama had once remodeled the shed at his family's house into his own space. His father had found out and scolded him harshly for it, of course. But don't do anything dangerous there, okay? Don't worry, I don't want to get yelled at by my dad. Naori's father, Yuzuru, had left the Hinagami family to marry into the Kuriya family. So the Kuriya family also had some pull in the area. Well, I don't think you guys are up to anything bad. I'm honored that you think so. Naori smiled. We could go to war with the West at any minute, so if you don't stay in the village, you'll get conscripted right away. Takayama had meant it as a bit of a threat, but... People with criminal records aren't conscripted, though. They would disgrace the Empire, after all. Naori had an easy comeback ready. I know, I just don't want anyone disgracing the village. Besides, I hear even though they do conscription physicals here, they don't actually recruit anyone. That's ridiculous. Is that true? Takayama tried to prevent Naori from continuing, but Ayato butted in, pressing him for more. Well, that might not be true, it's just what I heard. Naori gave an ambiguous answer, perhaps sympathizing with Takayama. Anyway, you guys should just concentrate on your studies. I don't think I need to worry about anything in that area. Naori gazed at the rest of them. Are you going to study medicine? I've got to take over the clinic after all. Naori shrugged and picked up a mandarin. We should head back now. Ready to go study? We should just do it here. You already had her textbook open by the stove. I concentrate better in my own room. I suppose you're right. Let's go, Ohina, Guriko. You interrupted the two of them while they were chatting away. Huh? Already? You can talk about clothes whenever you want, can't you? Yeah, but... What, are you not interested, young mistress? Not really. What's the point of dressing up when you live in the middle of nowhere? We dress up because we've got no other ways to amuse ourselves. Karen nodded in agreement. Yeah, that's pretty true if you just live in the middle of nowhere. I'll tell you about what's popular in Tokyo next time. My father's going to buy me a magazine. I'd rather read a literary magazine. So, weren't you guys going home? Takayama urged the students, exasperated by their antics. We are. Come on, Karen. Yes, I know. They all left the stove. Well, see you later, Takayama-san. At least bring business with you if you're going to visit. I don't think anyone would visit if they had to do that. It's peaceful here, after all. Fine with me. It's better to be bored. Now get out of here. Takayama drove the students out and finally reclaimed his spot by the stove. All of his mandarins were gone. So they're just going there to steal all his mandarins. A girl walked down a snow-laden road. She stopped every once in a while and glanced at her surroundings. She saw a building with a sign that read Village Administration Branch Office and a small police station. She hesitated to enter either building at the moment. It wasn't as if she'd done something, but as a young girl, it frightened her to enter a place with a lot of adults. Her fear was exacerbated by the fact that she'd barely ever held a conversation with a stranger. All she'd wanted was to go outside for a bit. She could see the building she'd left far in the distance. She'd walked all the way from there on her own 2 feet. She could hardly believe it. What should I do? The girl, Satsuki, puffed out the words with white breath. Her feet were numb with cold. It wasn't bad enough to prevent her from walking, but her thin sandals were somewhat damp and her fingers felt hot, painful, and numb all at once. If she huddled down, her clothes would get wet, so she couldn't do that either. And just when she decided she could enter a building and ask to rest inside... Oh, she heard a voice behind her. Huh? She turned around. There was a boy around the same age as her. Who might you be? Satsuki lost her composure and her eyes wandered upwards. She wasn't sure how to respond to that question. I'm... Are you a guest up at the Shigusa Shrine? Another boy who looked to be a little older started speaking to her too. A guest? Huh? You don't know Rihito? I thought the Hinagamis would know more about this. I haven't heard anything. The two boys conversed in front of Satsuki. I want to get back to the shrine, but I don't know the way, Satsuki professed timidly. The Shigusa Shrine is just down this road and up the steps, but it might be hard in those clothes. I bet your feet are freezing. Yes. Carry her, Rihito. What? Satsuki yelped and looked at the boy who'd been called Rihito. Why do I have to? It's the duty of a young Japanese gentleman like yourself to protect frail maidens, is it not? His tone was teasing. I guess so, but... I can walk. She couldn't be a bother to these boys. Satsuki took a step in order to leave, when... She tripped quite splendidly. Look out! The snow on the road whirled up. You okay? The older boy gave the two of them a dumbfounded look. Yes. Satsuki nodded where she'd fallen. Then could you stand? Rihito's gonna get squished. What? The boy was sandwiched between Satsuki's backside and the ground. Hey, I wouldn't be complaining. I'm so sorry. Nah, don't worry about it. The boy stood and dusted the snow off his clothes. This is his dream as a young Japanese gentleman, the older boy said, laughing. No, it's not. Here. The boy squatted and turned his back to Satsuki. Huh? I might be a little wet, though, he urged her bluntly. That was when Satsuki finally realized he was offering to carry her. Oh wow, he's seriously gonna do that. But... Why don't you take advantage of his offer, since he's going to the trouble and all? Thank you. She placed her hands on the boy's shoulders and entrusted her weight to him. He wasn't wet. But she might be, if you know what I mean. The boy stood easily. He looked quite thin, but he was still plenty strong. I'm really sorry, Rihito-san. It's Ayato. Huh? Hinagami Ayato. Rihito's my nickname. This is Nao-chan, Kuruya Naori. Oh, I'm Satsuki. Then is Sachan okay? What? Satsuki blinked. Nao-chan, should you really give someone you just met a nickname like that? At Ayato's words, she realized that Naori had been addressing her. It's more cozy this way. That's a good thing, right, Sachan? Yes. Satsuki gave a hesitant nod. It was the first time she'd been given a nickname like this. Well, as long as you're okay with it, let's go then. Ayato started walking. Satsuki hurriedly clung to him. She could faintly feel his body heat. That kinda hurts. Oh, I'm so sorry. Naori snickered behind them. They walked along the path that had been cleared of snow and came to the center of the settlement, Kamihina. Rihito-san, I can walk now, Satsuki said to Ayato when they came to a crossroads. You don't have to push yourself, Ayato said to her, breath white in the cold. Yeah, I mean, then she has to climb all those steps. You should probably call it quits at the steps ahead. Naori looked up at the road before them. The steps that led to the Shigusa shrine went almost all the way up the mountain. Or do you want Sachan to keep clinging to you? Of course not. Ayato crouched down. Thank you very much. Satsuki hurriedly climbed down to the snowy ground and straightened her skirt. Phew. Ayato gave a big stretch. Is this the first time you've been to the village, Sachin? Yes. Then I'll give you a little explanation. First, this is Kamihina, the center of the village. Naori spread out his arms. The Kuriya clinic where I live is right there, so come over if anything happens. My house is in Kamihina too, but it's a little further away, toward Hidarihina. Hidari? Satsuki turned to her left. No, that's Migihina. We were just in Maihina, and the shrine's in Atohina, so you have to think of it as if you're facing the entrance to the village. Ayato turned Satsuki around. Oh. Now my house is over here, on the left. I see. People mostly live in Hidari, Miji, and Kamihina. Maihina has the inn, the village branch office, and the police station. Well, shall we? Ayato took the lead and started climbing the steps. The steep steps had been carefully swept and were largely free of snow. Still, it was a long way, so it was tough to climb up and down. The resident police officer, Takeyama-san, always shovels these steps, Ayato explained from the front of the group. He's got a crush on Saya-san, so he's pretty serious about his work. Really? Satsuki asked, picturing Shigusa Saya, who had been taking care of her since she came to the village. Well, if you asked him, he'd probably deny it. Naori laughed. That guy has a really weird serious side, so he'd probably say it was for the old man at the shrine. Ayato agreed. That old man never comes down the steps, though. The old man at my house has to go to him on house calls. I see. Satsuki didn't really understand, so all she could do was nod ambiguously. How long are you going to be here? Ayato asked her. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't really know. Satsuki shook her head. She had no authority to decide how long she would be there. I hope you're here for the festival in March, right, Rihito? Yeah. Festival? We have a festival on March 3rd to welcome the Miko. We start getting busy for it around New Year's. Do we? You really are clueless, aren't you, Rihito? Naori muttered, exasperated. Well, Grandpa and Grandma handle all that stuff, and here we are. Ayato finished climbing the steps. Above him was the shrine's torii gate. Thank you very much. Satsuki bowed her head. You haven't done anything since getting to the steps, though. You didn't do anything before that either, Nao-chan. Ayato pouted. Satsuki couldn't help smiling. I get the feeling you two are very close. There aren't a lot of kids our age, after all. We've got a few other friends, too. I know. I'll introduce you to them next time. Oh? They're kind of noisy, but girls are supposed to get along with other girls, right? I suppose so. I wonder if I'll be able to get along with them, though. I'm a little nervous. I've never really had any friends before. Yeah, as you might expect. Satsuki is sort of like the shy, quiet type. I don't think you need to worry. Well, we can talk about that later. Looks like the welcoming party's here. Naori glanced toward the shrine. A man and a woman came up from the shrine office next to the shrine. It was the senior priest, Kensei, and his wife, Mia. Hello, Kensei-san, Mia-san. Naori greeted them first and Ayato followed. Did you help Satsuki-san back? We did. I'm sorry for going out without permission. Satsuki bowed her head deeply. I don't mind. I was thinking we'd need to introduce you to everyone pretty soon anyway. Did you greet them? Yes, both of them. We heard Satsuki-san's a guest at the shrine. That's right. We'll have her go formally greet the Hinagami soon, so could you tell your grandfather, Ayato-kun? Of course. Ayato nodded. Satsuki-san, Sai is waiting for you. Okay. Satsuki nodded and turned to the two who had guided her here. I'm terribly sorry for all the trouble I've caused you. She bowed her head deeply. Nah, I don't mind. Let's hang out again soon. The two boys headed down the stone steps. Well then. Kensei turned to Mia. We don't want you getting chilblains, so could you prepare her a foot bath, Mia-san? I've already prepared one. Come with me, Satsuki-san. I'm terribly sorry. She sat down on the edge of the wooden floor and dipped her bare feet into a wash basin filled with hot water. Phew. She regained the sensation in her fingertips along with some pain and itching. We'll have to rub them to get the blood flowing. Mia rubbed her feet with a towel. I like where this is going. Thank you. You're our guest, so we can't have anything happening to you. Okay, make sure you dry off too. Mia carefully wiped her feet off, making sure she didn't leave any moisture in between Satsuki's toes. I gotta be real precise about that. What are you doing, Ne-sama? Satsuki heard the voice from behind her. I'm wiping off Satsuki-san's feet, Saya. There's no need for you to do something like that, Ne-sama. Saya walked briskly over to Mia and grabbed the cloth in her hand. But we can't have her getting chilblains. There's no need. Saya spat out the words and looked down at Satsuki. Going out on your own like that, even if Kensei-san gave his permission, that would normally never be allowed. I'm sorry. Something tells me there's some sort of resentment here. Satsuki hung her head and apologized to Saya. Saya, I'm handling these things, so I would appreciate it if you didn't do unnecessary things like this, Ne-sama. Right. Mia nodded and stood. Satsuki-san, please make sure you dry your fingertips too, okay? Oh, yes, thank you. Mia took the wash basin and left. We're going back, Satsuki. Without waiting for her response, Saya grabbed Satsuki's arm and pulled her up. Yes, understood. Satsuki was brought to the room she'd been in since she came to the village. You are not to leave without permission. And with that, Saya left the room. So she's just being kept in a storehouse. Naori parted ways with Ayato at the crossroads in Kamihina and returned straight home to the clinic. The winter sun set early, and his surroundings were already dark. Electric lights dotted the darkness here and there. There wasn't much industry in the area, but electricity had come to the village pretty quickly. That too had probably been because of the pharmaceutical company the Hinagami family started. Naori hurried home, pondering such things. Nao-chan. It was a voice he was used to hearing. Oh, Nanako. It was Sawashiro Nanako, a nurse who worked at the Courier clinic. Leaving already? Yep, you know, Nao-chan, you should address your seniors with a little more respect. Then could you stop calling me Nao-chan, Nanako-san? But Nao-chan is Nao-chan. There it was. No matter how many times he told her, Nanako insisted on calling Naori Nao-chan. Naori had started calling her Nanako because of this, half out of spite. So, is it your dad again? It is. He's gotten so stubborn in his old age. It's a pain. Nanako flashed a wry smile. Nanako's father was a former mining engineer, and he'd been working at home since becoming ill. Nanako had become a nurse partly to care for him, and normally worked at the Courier clinic. Phew. Nanako gave a big stretch. Though they were covered by a large coat, Nanako's breast bounced when she stretched, and Naori found his gaze glued to her for a moment. He quickly averted his eyes. Oh? What are you getting all red for? Maybe it's your imagination. Oh, really? It's just the sunset. The sun was long gone, of course. Guess you're right. Nanako smiled nonetheless. Naori wasn't sure whether or not she'd noticed. Well, Nao-chan, see you tomorrow. Nanako waved her hand as she left. I just can't deal with her. Yeah, I don't really blame him. I'd be a little bit distracted by that. Night. The Kuria family had finished dinner and was relaxing in the living room. Naori's father, Yuzuru, and his grandfather, So. His mother and grandmother had both passed away, leaving the Kuria family one of widowers. That's right, Naori. What? His grandfather So stopped Naori as he was about to return to his room. Sometime early next year, I think, a relative's kids are going to come stay with us here. A relative? Not a Hinagami, though. There'd be no point in us taking care of Hinagami relatives, would there? Yuzuru, who left the Hinagami family and took his wife's name, muttered. That's kind of weird that he has his wife's name. It's two siblings from Chisato's, your mom's younger sister's family. They want to recuperate in a place with lots of nature, so I hear. Lots of nature? That's pretty much all we've got here. There isn't even a hot spring. Well, apparently there's one at the inn, from what I remember. It's not like a hot spring is necessary for recuperation. I know. One of them's a young lady, I hear, so you better keep your paws off her. Shouldn't we be saying that to you, Grandpa? You're the one always touching Nanako's butt. So he's like the pervy grandfather. I'm just performing physical examinations. So replied without even a hint of hesitation. If we lose her, the clinic will go under in a flash, so could you keep it under control, Dad? This is the only clinic around here, so I don't think we'd shut down without Nanako. Don't be such a fool, Naori. If Nanako-kun leaves, I'll drop dead in a flash. If you've got that kind of energy, I think you'll live till 100, Dad. Naori couldn't help but concur. Well, anyway, that's that. I hear it's starting to smell like war over in Tokyo nowadays, so they probably want to evacuate over here. My brother said that they haven't had any rice in the Tokyo restaurant since summer. You just don't get that impression in the mountains of Toyama. Naori's father and grandfather carried on the conversation. I've heard talk of a war starting with America, too. Thanks to that, the bat's become a kite. Yuzuru grumbled as he toyed with a cigarette. Oh, what's a cigarette? I have no idea. Oh, okay, so it's a brand of Japanese cigarette. Golden Bat. Well, I've got studying to do. Sure. Naori returned to his room and opened up a book. He wasn't actually studying, but rather reading a novel he liked. He planned on succeeding the family business and becoming a doctor, and his studies were going well. But that wouldn't be for a long time still. At the time, he wanted to immerse himself in the world of his daydreams. He took out a sheaf of paper and ran his pencil over it. He'd written a little, but not quite enough to call it a novel yet. He was just writing down whatever came to mind, so he hadn't even committed it to proper draft paper yet. When would he finish it? Not even Naori knew. So he's an aspiring novelist? Kind of like someone we know. Spooky. The light of the lantern cast Satsuki's shadow on the wall. The room was without windows. No, it was too plain a space to be called a room. From the outside, it appeared to be a simple storehouse. It looked largely the same on the inside. This was the room that had been given to Satsuki. The room contained the bare minimum of things necessary to live. And nothing else. No, there was one thing. Satsuki leaned toward a large mirror. An image of Satsuki shimmered like a heat haze on the other side of the cold mirror. I met an interesting person today. Satsuki spoke, facing the mirror. Who was it? Satsuki replied. A Hinagami and a Kuria. I see. Satsuki nodded and picked the doll up from the floor. He was called Rihito-san. His real name is Aito-san, though. Rihito. So he's... Yes. Satsuki stroked the doll's cheek, as if it were the doll she was speaking with. So Satsuki either had some kind of split personality disorder or there's something else going on with her.